Right then, so a couple of weeks back, I posted an overview of this frame right here, and it got quite a lot of attention, actually. So it's a carbon all-road frame set from a Chinese direct-to-consumer brand called LightCarbon, and for the price, the quality does seem pretty impressive. For the frame set, which includes carbon frame, fork, seat post, integrated carbon handlebars of your choosing, the bottom bracket, the finishing kit, and a computer mount as well, it's all just $950. However, I did actually find a small manufacturing defect inside the seat tube in the frame. You can see there's a couple of loose fibers here. But after a discussion with LightCarbon, it's not really a problem at all. It's only a couple of loose bits of carbon, and it's not going to affect the structural integrity in any way. Go and watch my initial video for the full kind of breakdown, but it turned out to be a small issue with the latex mold used in the manufacture of the frame. Well, LightCarbon have now fixed the issue, but regardless, today I'm going to be building up this bike, and I've got some pretty interesting stuff to throw on it, actually, basically all of which has come from AliExpress, including one of the cheapest electronic group sets you can currently buy. Now, spoiler alert, the bike's already finished. It's sat right here next to me. I'm filming this after I've built it, and yes, it's pretty freaking sick. Anyway, my name, as always, is Luke, and yeah, welcome back to Trace Velo. Now, just to set expectations, I will be giving you a full breakdown of the total cost and the kind of weight of this bike later on, but for now, let's not muck about and get straight into the build. Also, full disclosure, LightCarbon sent me this frame and a set of wheels over to test, but they haven't paid me anything. No money has changed hands or anything like that. And also, they've had no say in the content of the episode either. So yeah, let's crack on. Right, I'm gonna get this bike all built today, so here's what I'm starting with. Now, the frame, you already know, I covered it in detail in a previous video, but I set up these wheels yesterday. These are some gravel-specific wheels sent over by LightCarbon, so Pro X Carbon is their kind of a wheel brand, and yeah, these ones are 50 mil deep, but the internal width is 26. So yeah, these are nice and wide. So for both of these wheels, it comes to just under 1,500 grams, which isn't too bad for a set of kind of chunky gravel wheels, and I think the cost is about 600 bucks, but I will double check that. Well, technically, this frame only supports up to 700 by 38C tires, but I've put these on. So these are a set of Schwalbe G1 all-round gravel tires that I had in the attic, and they're 700 by 40, so they clear absolutely fine. On the front, you can see there are loads of rim, but on the back, it's kind of difficult for me to show you, but yeah, there's not much clearance at all. So when I get out of the saddle, when I give it welly, the wheel could potentially flex and the tires could end up rubbing on the kind of inside of the chainstay there, so not ideal. I just happen to have these in the attic, but if I was gonna specifically spec out tires for this build, I would probably stick with 700 by 38C. But as it stands, I'm just gonna run it with 700 by 40s and see how we get on. This is the rest of the stuff that I'll be, putting on the bike today, and I've got some pretty interesting bits. Firstly, group set. So this was an obvious choice, really. I'm going electronic, and it's the L-TWOO ER7. So this is their kind of more budget focused electronic group set. I think this whole setup here cost me 370 quid, although I will put the full price up on screen. But yeah, it does look really decent. So I'm running 2x. It's going to be a 2x12 drivetrain. And yeah, after getting this in hand, it does look very nice. They've obviously been producing electronic group sets for a little while at this point, and this does look pretty refined, but I won't really know until I get it on the bike, but quite excited to give that a go. 12-speed cassette here, so this is kind of all milled out of a single block of chromoly steel, so it's a kind of mono block cassette. This one is from a brand called S-Road. I've had this a few years, but it's still got loads of life left in it, and I think this cost me about 80 quid when I bought it, so let's quickly bang it on the scales here so I can give you an idea of the weight. So that comes out at 222 grams, which for a fully steel 11 to 32 cassette, I don't think that's too bad, so that's going on. The crankset for this build is an interesting one. Looks really nice, doesn't it? So this is from a brand called Z-Race. It's their unchained power meter crankset, which is cool. So this is a 50-34 chainring with 170 mil carbon crank arms. And the weight for this setup is 616 grams, which isn't too bad. And you can get this for 280 quid. I saw it for, which is pretty nuts. It's got a dub standard 29 mil axle in there. So I've got a dub standard T47 bottom bracket. I think this one is from ZTTO, and it's got ceramic bearings in as well. So all good, but yeah, excited to try that out. Pretty standard look Keo pedals. So these are from a brand called XU-Star. Okay, I think for the pair, it cost me about 40 quid. This cheap bar tape from AliExpress from this brand Buckloss, it was about 15 quid, I think, this bar tape, but it does look pretty decent, so that should be good. And then I've got this lightweight bottle cage. I think that was like a tenner, maybe less. And then this saddle from a brand called Riot. So the top is a 3D printed rubber for the cushion, and then we've got a carbon base and carbon saddle rails. And I think this cost 38 quid when I picked it up a little while ago. I've used this on a previous build, but it's nice and comfortable, so that's going on. The chain, I picked this up on AliExpress a little while ago for about 15, 20 quid, but I tried an 11-speed chain from this brand Racework, and it was not very good. I just happened to have it in the cupboard though, but I would probably already recommend you don't choose a chain like this and just go with one from like SRAM or Shimano. But as I've got it, I'm gonna run it. And finally, the disc rotors. So these are pretty cool, aren't they? So I think these were 16 quid each. They're center lock. They do look pretty good, although they're not particularly lightweight. So I'll bang this on. So these come out to 146 grams each. And just for a point of comparison, this is the latest Shimano Ice Tech rotor in 160. It's 108 grams. So yeah, these are quite, quite chunky, but they do look pretty good, right? So I'm gonna run them as well. Right then, fingers crossed, this should be a straightforward build, but I always say that at the beginning of these and then end up facing an issue somewhere down the line. But it's an electronic group set, so no gear cables to contend with. And to make things even better, I've got my iced latte with my reusable cat-shaped ice cubes that I got for my birthday. So I'm all set. Right then, first step, I'm gonna cut the steerer tube here to length. So I'm running 2.5 centimeters of spacers, and the handlebar height is about, well, it's just over 1 centimeter higher than I would normally run, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution a little bit because I can obviously cut the steerer tube shorter, I can't make it longer. Plus, this isn't like a race machine, it's an all-road bike, so I don't want the position to be super aggressive. So that's what I'm gonna go with. I'll mark it there and then cut about 0.5 centimeter below that, and then I can start throwing the rest of the stuff on the bike. Right, I'll need this, which is for cutting steerer tubes, and then I'll mount that in this vise, so I'll probably put that on this chest of drawers here, and then I can cut the steerer tube. Right then, this is all set up and good to go. I've put this little rag here to catch any of the carbon fiber dust, and I'll put a mask on as well because breathing in carbon fiber dust is not particularly good for your lungs. So yeah, let's crack on and cut this to length. Right, a little bit of filing later, and with the compression plug in there, yeah, we're good to go. So I'm gonna get it fitted up to the bike and double check the length. That is absolutely spot on. I can fit the cap on, and that's the headset pretty much sorted out. So let's crack on with the rest of the bike. Right, first thing I'm gonna tackle is the rear brake hose because I figure it's probably one of the more complicated bits in terms of routing. So this is how it comes from L-TWOO. So you've got the caliper here, and then they plumb the brake hose into the back of it. As it happens, I normally like to work the other way around. So I like to plumb the brake line into the back of the shifter and then run that through the bike because I find it a little bit easier to kind of guesstimate how long you want the brake hoses that way. But I'm gonna try it this way around. So yeah, let's give it a go. Okay, right, so I've got the rear brake mounted up and I've got some sound deadening foam. For those that don't know, this is sound deadening foam. I got this stuff on AliExpress. It's just squishy foam that's hollow, and you run it over the top of any cables or hoses going through the frame to stop rattling. Got it poking out the top here, and I also took the opportunity to grease up the top and bottom headset bearings as well. Here's the front brake attached onto the fork, and I've run the brake hose up and out here. So I'll get this mounted up into the frame, and then I'll show you how this compression ring works as well, because basically you thread the brake hoses through that little slit at the top there. Right, it should look a little something like this. So I've got the rear brake hose here, and then the front brake hose. And over the top, I've got this preload or compression ring with that space at the front for both hoses to feed through. Next up, it's the kind of headset spacers and stuff. This one goes on first, and then the spacers on top. And they've got a gap at the front for the hoses to feed through. Pretty straightforward. Onto the handlebars, the hoses will need to feed through here and then out either side underneath to the shifters. Doing that blind though is going to be quite difficult, so I've got a cable routing tool here. Got this on AliExpress for really cheap, and it's got a magnet to help kind of feed the cables through. So I'm going to get that set up and I'll talk to you in a sec. Right, so even with this magnetic cable routing tool, I realized it wasn't gonna be all that straightforward actually, because I think I'm gonna need to pull both brake hoses through the handlebars at the same time when I kind of plop it on. So I've gone for this approach. At the end of the hoses, they have these little connectors that kind of bung them up, right? And then you can feed a gear cable through. So I've put a gear cable through either one, and then I've fed them through the handlebar because they're a bit easier to manage. That means that I can, pull both sets of brake hoses through at the same time. So hopefully this should work. I'll give it a go and report back. All right, sweet. That's that's all done. It wasn't too bad actually. So that little trick with the gear cables, definitely the move. So next up, I've got to size these up, get them plumbed into the shifters, and we've made some really good progress. Right, so I've got the shifters pretty much where I want them, although I can kind of still move them around. And luckily I found I've got a little bit more leeway in terms of the length of the brake hoses than I initially thought, because what I can do is I can push a little bit of excess inside the handlebar, then cut it to length. So I've still got a bit to play with in case I need to kind of move things around. So I'll get both sides plumbed in, and then we can get these brakes bled. Right, that was incredibly easy. So this new generation of L2 shifters, they've updated the design around here to make plumbing them just much more straightforward. So there's a little cutout right here. So basically you can get your 10mm spanner in there nice and easily, and then get your 8mm spanner on there and do everything up nice and tight. Yeah, just very, very nice. So I'll get it done on this side, and then we can get them bled. Right then, bleeding the brakes, pretty straightforward. Let me talk you through it. So I've put the bleed block in the caliper, so I'm obviously bleeding the front brake, and then I've got a syringe full of oil plumbed in to this bleed port on the caliper here. And then up the top on this one labeled oil, so you can see there's one labeled air and one labeled oil. So I've pulled that one out, and I've put a bleed funnel on a little hose because it didn't quite sit flush on the top of the shifter there. So I've kind of extended it with this hose. Now I'll show you kind of how I approach L2 stuff. So basically what I'll do is I'll squeeze oil through, and you can see it should be blue because the brake lines will be full of oil from the factory, and the L2 oil, for whatever reason, is blue, and then it should start going red. There you can see that. And it doesn't matter if the two mix, they're both mineral oil, so I'm just squeezing the syringe. And then next up, I just basically pump the oil back through by squeezing the brake lever, like so. And then it pumps that back through into the syringe right there. And that's essentially how I bleed L2 brakes. One little extra piece of advice I'll give you when bleeding L2 group sets like this is, see that screw there? That's the free stroke adjustment screw, or believe it, that's how it kind of acts anyway. You want this screwed pretty much all the way out, because if it's screwed in at all, it has a tendency to kind of block certain mechanisms within the shifter, and then it makes bleeding almost impossible. So if you are bleeding these group sets, make sure that screw is backed out pretty much all the way. Okay, that was, legitimately quite a pleasant experience actually, because it was really easy to get these installed and plumbed in, and then bleeding these brakes was one of the most straightforward bleeding processes I've ever had. Yeah, that was honestly a bit of a dream to install. I've also kind of set up the group set, so I've paired the shifters with the group set here, so I can show you. Rear derailleur fine, front derailleur all good. So yeah, let's get all this gubbins installed onto the bike. So next up, I need to get this battery inside the seat post. And luckily, LightCarbon actually supply you with these, specific shims, battery shims, which is really, really useful because it's a kind of proprietary shape on that seat post. So those should slip around this battery. So let's get it installed. Right then, look at that. Absolutely spot on. That's a perfect fit. So next up, I need to start running these cables. I need them both run through the seat tube here. So I'll get it up in the bike stand and get the cable routing at the back all sorted. Okay, great. So it's all wired up and good to go. Front and rear derailleur work fine. So we're kind of towards the end, honestly. So a few little bits to button up, and I'm desperate to get out on this bike before the end of the day because it's still sunny outside. So yeah, let's crack on. Okay, so buttoning up the last few bits here on the bike, and I'm getting the tires fitted. But once I had them on the bike, there was a bit of a problem. Right, so after slapping the group set on, the front derailleur actually rubbed on the rear tyre, so I've got to get some new ones. I've come to a bike shop, it's like 25 to 6, so they're going to close soon. I'm going to see if they've got some tyres that I need in stock, so yeah, wish me luck.
5 minutes later.
So I got the tyres, Bontrager Girona all-round gravel, 700 by 38C, 60 quid each though. So that's 120 quid for a pair. Yeah, that stung a bit, but still, hopefully these will clear. So let's go and stick them on the bike and find out. Right, they're new tyres here. So let me show you the issue. Yeah, these are the 700 by 40s, and look at that. It, yeah, rubs on the actual front derailleur. So yeah, hopefully the 700 by 38s will be fine. I think Schwalbe's have a tendency to come up a little bit bigger in my experience as well. So let me get the calipers out actually. I bet this is more than 700 by 40. Actually, no, they come up like bang on. So yeah, hopefully those tyres will fit, because maybe I don't think 2 millimeters is going to make much difference. But yeah, let's stick them on and see how we do. All right, with the new tyre on, there is clearance. Still not masses, honestly, but yeah, enough. Better than nothing, like there was on the other tyre, so that's good. And there's more clearance down there as well. So yeah, a necessary purchase, even if 120 quid did sting quite a lot actually for a pair of tyres, but still, I'll get the one mounted up on the front, and then we'll index the gears, and all that's left is bar tape.
1 hour later.
Right, I'm rushing a bit because I want to get out before the end of the day, hence the kind of mess, but the bike is finished. And it looks pretty tasty, I'll say that much. So yeah, the new tyres are great, everything clears, that's absolutely fine. I've played around with the gears, they seem to be indexed up pretty well, and I'm quite pleased with the bar tape job I've done actually. So yeah, it's all good to go. I'm gonna get out before the sunset. Now, by the time I sorted my life out and managed to get out of the house, the sun had gone down, but I'd been working on this bike the whole day, so I was desperate to try it out. I did a bit of road and a bit of gravel / bridle way, and honestly, yeah, it did surprise me. It's all road. I'm off-road right now. It's actually really comfortable. I am genuinely surprised. This thing is far more capable than I thought it would be. Anyway, it was a beautiful evening, but as you can see, it was getting a little bit late, so I headed back home, but there was a small issue with the bike. I mean, it's not like a massive problem, but it was really annoying, so I had a lot of disc brake rub. Can you hear that? I'll do the rear as well. Now, as it happens, they are a little bit thicker than standard Shimano rotors. So Shimano standard is 1.8 millimeters. These came up to 1.86, so that probably doesn't help. Now, I've faffed about with them quite a lot. So I've tried to retrue them. I've reset the pistons inside the calipers. The issue has returned several times. So rather than faffing about trying to make these work, I'm actually going to replace them with these. These ones come up a little bit thinner, so 1.75 millimeters in thickness, which is probably going to help. Plus, they're quite easy to true, these ones. So if they're a little tiny bit warped, you can easily true those. Whereas these, I think because it has a carbon carrier here, the carbon spider, they're not particularly easy to true. So yeah, I'm gonna get these replaced. Right, with that finished, we're in business. So no disc brake rub on the back or on the front either. So I'm gonna get the chain back on and then head out for another ride. Straight up, this bike is really, really lovely. I think it looks fantastic. I'd maybe prefer if the wheels didn't have that big white Pro X branding on them, but I still think it looks really slick, and those tan sidewall tires are certainly growing on me. However, if I'm honest, it's not really the bike I thought it would be. When I first checked out the frame, I noticed quite a lot of aero characteristics actually. So nice wide bladed fork. The head tube and the down tube have some aero profiling. There's some like aero cutouts where the seat stay meets the seat tube, and the seat post itself isn't a standard round one. It's kind of got a bladed, narrow aero profile on there as well. At first glance, well, at least to me, it kind of screams stiff, responsive, quite aggressive, and potentially quite unforgiving. Great for holding speed on the roads when it's nice and flat, but because of that, I was a little bit skeptical about how comfortable it was going to be on the rough stuff. But it kind of blew me away, actually. Now, yes, I am running quite chunky 38C gravel tires at about 40 PSI, so that does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of comfort, but there is a lot more flex and compliance built into the frame than you'd maybe expect. Now, I reckon this is because of kind of two factors in the geometry. So firstly, the top tube slopes down quite a lot, which means you run a lot of seat post exposed, right? So at the top where the saddle's attached, there's a lot of back and forth deflection there. And secondly, the seat stays themselves are really dropped down quite low. I mean, look at where they kind of meet the seat tube in comparison to my more standard endurance road bike here. Again, this design adds more flex to the rear end, and to help sort of visualize this, Cycling Weekly released a clip recently that was taken at a BMC event, I believe, and there's a demonstration showing the difference between dropped versus non-dropped seat stays. Obviously, the amount of flex shown here is massively exaggerated. It's only a plastic model after all, but it does kind of serve to show how effective dropped seat stays can be in the kind of geometry of a frame. So ultimately, this thing does far better on the rough stuff than I would have kind of initially expected, and the kind of general riding position on this thing is incredibly comfortable. For example, the head tube is quite long actually, so a lot of more aero focused racy frames will make the head tube quite a lot shorter, so that means you're in a more aggressive aero position on the bike, and it also reduces the frontal area for kind of aero gains. But here with that longer head tube and the additional spaces that I put underneath the handlebars, it means my riding position is quite upright actually. Now you can still get on the drops and kind of tuck in for extra speed on the flats, but with that slightly more relaxed riding style, it's just really, really nice for cruising along, getting the miles in. Plus, there's this. So there's an aspect to riding this thing which I've really, really enjoyed, and it's something you wouldn't necessarily notice unless you really kind of picked apart the geometry, and it's this. I can really easily cycle with no hands, and it's to do with the fact that the geometry is such that the trail of the fork is quite long, because a lot of the bikes I have are slightly more aggressive, kind of aero focused road bikes, and the trail tends to be a bit shorter, so you get kind of sharper, snappier steering. But here, the wheelbase is longer, the kind of fork juts out a little bit more, and it means you can ride really easily like this. It's just really refreshing because I don't really have this on any of the bikes that I've got currently. My gravel bike kind of does it, but it's a bit more unwieldy than this thing. But yeah, it's honestly really, really lovely. Such a comfortable bike to ride. Genuinely really nice. So yeah, the frame, it's honestly really nice. Plus, as a bonus, it was incredibly easy to work on. Everything went together well. There were no adjustments needed or kind of faffing about. The seat post hasn't slipped in at all, which is really great. And the included handlebars are nice as well. They're well built and they're comfortable too. I mean, I've got to say, if you're in the market for something like this frame is pretty easy to recommend. Right, let's discuss the L-TWOO ER7 group set. So firstly, now I've swapped out those disc rotors, braking is, yeah, pretty fantastic. Minimal lever travel, and yeah, the brakes just feel direct, nice and solid. Shifting performance is really decent, front and back. I will say it did take a little bit of tweaking in the app, and also slightly repositioning the front derailleur in order to remove any chain rub up front with the crankset. But with that done, it does run really well. However, for those wondering, it's not quite as good as 105 Di2. Now, I was doing a bit of bike packing in Spain a couple of weeks back in April, and the bike I hired had 105 Di2. Now, the bike itself had its own problems. For example, it didn't use dropped seat stays, and it was incredibly stiff. But yeah, 105 Di2 is just a little bit better. In terms of braking and brake feel, there's very little between them actually, because as mentioned, the brakes on this L-TWOO group set are pretty phenomenal. But the shifting on Shimano Di2 gear is a very high bar. It's always very good. I mean, it's not that much of a surprise really. On this bike, yeah, I've got L-TWOO shifters and derailleurs, but I'm running a third-party cassette, third-party crankset, and some rando chain that I bought off AliExpress. On bikes with Shimano gear, it's generally all Shimano, including Shimano cassette, chain, and crankset as well, all designed perfectly from the ground up to work together. So the shifting on this bike, it is great, but it takes a little bit of tweaking, and it doesn't quite have that kind of refinement that goes along with the kind of full Shimano group set, if you see what I mean. Plus, if I'm brutally honest, the kind of build quality on Shimano stuff is a little better as well. I mean, have a look at this. I don't think you'd necessarily get that level of play on Shimano stuff, right? That being said, no dropped chains, pretty much perfect shifting, front and back, and great brakes. I mean, for 380 quid, I've certainly got no complaints. But that being said, the price of 105 Di2 is falling all the time. So I think if you can stretch to it, a full Shimano group set on this thing would just kind of elevate it that little bit more, if you catch my drift.
Also, I forgot to mention, because the L-TWOO ER7 is a road group set and the pulley cage
on the back. It's quite long as well. When you're bouncing around off-road, you do get a bit of chain slap. I've not had any dropped chains, but yeah, the tension spring in the rear derailleur is not super strong. It's not really optimized for off-road. Now, on the topic of tyre clearance, because I've had a couple of questions on this, I think 38C is probably the upper limit, especially for gravel tyres. If you're running road tyres, I think you might just get away with 40C because the tread is a bit thinner and kind of less aggressive, but I still think you'd probably be pushing it at the back. I mean, I've not tried it, but yeah, there wouldn't be much clearance there to spare. Right, so the weight. Now, weighed with pedals, bottle cage, computer mount, and quite chunky gravel tyres, it comes in at 8.26 kilos, which I think is pretty decent. Now, weighed without pedals, bottle cage, and computer mount, like most bikes on the market, I think it would actually squeeze in just under 8 kilos. Right then, onto the big one, cost. So the total build came to 2,121 quid, but it's kind of worth bearing in mind that's not necessarily gospel. So I bought everything apart from the frame, wheel set, and the crankset as well. Those were sent over to me. I don't necessarily think you'd pay any additional in import duties into the UK, although that's never really a guarantee. And with the LightCarbon stuff, I didn't include the shipping because I don't know where you live. The shipping costs are different depending on regions, all that kind of stuff. So maybe add an additional 100 quid on top of that cost to kind of be safe. But either way, I still think that's a pretty competitive price for a build like this. Right then, let's compare this to some other bikes. And yeah, Ribble in the UK is a great place to start because they do a really good value carbon all-road bike. But interestingly, I looked last week and they were much more expensive. It looks like they've dropped their prices by about 500 quid across the board. Now, mine is arguably still better value, but I'll be honest, not by loads. So let me show you and you can make up your own mind. The all-road SL105, this is interesting. It's less money at 1,900 quid and arguably comes with a better group set, 105 Di2. Now, in a medium frame, it's 1 kilo heavier at 9 kilos. Weighed in the same way, mine comes in at 8 kilos in an XL frame. Plus, I have deep section carbon wheels and a power meter. But this is a similar bike in a lot of ways. Carbon frame, electronic group set, and clearance for 38C tyres. Kind of goes to show prices across the board in the bike industry are dropping. Now, the all-road SLR 105 is much closer in terms of spec. It's a more race-focused frame, some kind of aero characteristics on there. Slightly more expensive at 2,500 quid, and again, comes with 105 Di2, but it's still heavier at 8.75 kilos and no power meter. Now, the all-road SLR Ultegra gets closest in terms of weight. It's 8 kilograms in a medium and comes with relatively deep carbon wheels. The group set blows mine out of the water, no question. Ultegra Di2 is phenomenal, but it's 3,500 quid, and again, no power meter. So yeah, interesting. Mine is better value, but yeah, like I said, not by a lot. And the Ribble bikes will come with a warranty, returns, and all that good stuff. But yeah, judging by those prices, things are clearly getting tough for the bike industry in the UK. Now, the all-road concept, I wasn't initially sold on it when I first came across it, if I'm honest with you. It kind of felt like a gravel bike with extra steps. But if you only want to run one bike, it does kind of make sense. You can put on tires like I'm running if you want to tackle some kind of rougher roads, maybe a bit of light gravel, but then slap on some road-specific tires. You've got yourself a really comfortable and very capable kind of long-distance endurance road bike. Now, obviously, there are sacrifices on both sides of that equation, right? It's not the most capable thing off-road, and on-road, it's not going to feel as quick or as kind of agile as a dedicated road bike. But I can certainly see the appeal if maybe you can't afford 2 or more bikes, or maybe you don't have the space, something like that. But regardless, it's a really cool build, in my opinion, and I'm so glad I kind of threw this thing together. But yeah, let me know what you reckon in the comments. Is all-road something you would consider? Because yeah, it took me a little while to come around to the concept for sure. But anyway, thanks for sticking with. I'm gonna go and cook some chicken thighs that I've had marinating for the afternoon. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Ciao.
It's the bonus clip time.
Right, I've got the sliders on, so you know I mean business. Now, this chain, right? So I mentioned in the episode, I've not got a lot of faith in it. I don't think it's going to last very long because these cheap chains tend to stretch quite easily. And I reckon if I replace it, I might get a slight improvement in shifting as well. So I'm going to swap it out for this one. Now, YBN, I really rate these chains. I was given this at the Shanghai Bike Show, actually, which was cool. So it's a Shimano standard 12-speed flat top chain. You might be able to see there's some factory lube on there. So I'll get that all cleaned off, get this waxed, and get it banged on the bike. Bada bing. Waxed and ready. Right, now forgive all of the mess, but yeah, have a look at that. Yeah, it looks pretty cool, doesn't it? All nicely waxed up. I had a quick go with the shifting. It seems fine, actually. So, yeah, I'm quite confident the shifting is going to be nice and snappy. But yeah, I really like the way it looks, actually. Makes the whole thing look a lot more premium, I reckon. Anyway, let's get out on the road and give it a rip. So yeah, that is actually flipping great. I feel like it's a little bit quieter than the other chain I had on there as well. I mean, the shifting, maybe it's marginally better, but it's certainly quieter and it looks really flash as well.